Joining us now is Caleb Maupin to discuss the U.S. economy, the world economy, threats against Cuba. But before we go to that, I've got a couple of questions for him about Jake Lang. First thing on the show today, we had a press conference that Mayor Zoran Mamdani and the police commissioner Tish on the arrest of two teenage boys for setting off IUDs at a protest outside Gracie Mansion on Saturday. They'll be in federal court this afternoon. The complaint charges are going to be released later today. So, Caleb, perhaps you can untangle what that protest was all about, who Jake Lang is, the arrest of these two kids.
Oh, well, there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, as far as Jake Lang, I mean, you have to look at, so Jake Lang is somebody who was arrested in the January 6th Capitol riot. He did time. He was released. And that's not exactly a good resume builder, to have. It's not when you're going and applying for a job. That's not a good thing to have. I was part of the Capitol riot that, broke into the Capitol when Trump, was leaving office last time. And so Jake Lang, I mean, you listen to him talk, he's obviously not the world's most intelligent human being. And he's, basically figured out that what he has to do in order to have a career and pay his bills is to kind of be a clown, to be a rodeo clown. And so he goes from place to place, getting himself into situations where he makes people very, very angry, and people watch it on social media, and he makes money. And his thing was he was going to burn a Quran out in front of Gracie Mansion as a way to be racist and hostile to the new mayor of New York City. And I mean, it's just a tragedy of the social media age that we live in. I almost view Jake Lang almost as a victim in a way, because it's like, I mean, yes, he's very racist. Yes, he's offensive, but it's like we have a culture where that's what people do to get attention. I don't think he's really, thinking every night like, oh, what can I do to advance the interests of the country or whatever. I think he's just chasing likes and shares and social media dollars and getting attention for himself. And he's, in a way, degrading himself by doing this, right? I mean, he's kind of become kind of a laughing stock and a fool to get attention. And it's unfortunate that that's the way our culture has become.
Right, but this has now taken a serious direction with these two explosive devices that were set off. Two teenagers arrested, and a third device found in a car. They're now going to appear in federal court. So this desire for likes and shares and a little bit of 15 seconds of fame now affects the lives of two teenagers in this stunt. So what do you make of that?
Well, okay, now that issue is another point. And to be fair to Jake Lang, and as he said just a few minutes ago in his press conference, he didn't throw this bomb. This bomb was thrown by teens of Muslim descent who were offended by his anti-Islamic protests, and they gave the ISIS salute when they were going. This is being considered an ISIS-inspired act. So it looks like these are teens from Pennsylvania, apparently, who were, inspired by ISIS on the internet to engage in what could have been a very deadly act of terrorism. According to the NYPD, this was not a hoax bomb. This could have gone off, and a lot of people could have been hurt or killed. And that this was, we're lucky that this was, it wasn't active. And a couple of things were said that need to be pointed out. First of all, ISIS and Iran are enemies. So the idea that this was done on behalf of Iran, which is media, I've already seen media trying to say that, Iran is considered by ISIS to be Shia apostates. And the Islamic Revolutionary Guards of Iran have killed more ISIS fighters than America has on the battlefield in Syria and Iraq and elsewhere. And Iran has been the victim of ISIS terrorism itself. ISIS set off a number of bombs in the capital city of Tehran and has killed a lot of Iranians. And in fact, ISIS are Wahhabis, many of which believe that if you kill 7 Shia Muslims, and Iran is a Shia country, you get automatic entrance into heaven. So blaming this on Iran is just absurd. The other thing I will say about the press conference is, in terms of Mamdani, it was very wise politically because, the last kind of liberal mayor that we had, he didn't get off on a very good foot with the NYPD. And Mamdani is the first Muslim mayor of New York City. And the press conference was very much praising the NYPD, letting the NYPD kind of hail the officers who stepped in and prevented the bomb from detonating, which was a very heroic thing to do, right? I mean, the bomb, the fuse was going off. They ran towards it instead of away from it and prevented it from detonating and saved thousands or maybe tens or hundreds of lives possibly. And that was certainly admirable, and that it was very wise for Mamdani to hail them in the way he did and kind of let them run the press conference this way. And that I think with the vulnerable situation he's in politically and the fact that the NYPD, there's a history of them having anti-Islamic films produced by Israel in their training and such. So for him to hail them the way he did was very strategic. And I think he needs to really maintain a good relationship with the New York City Police Department as a mayor. And I saw him handle that very importantly, very effectively at the press conference. So I think Mamdani is being very smart politically in the way he's handling this. I think the teenagers, they apparently were inspired by ISIS on the internet to do this. And Jake Lang is. This is only going to encourage Jake Lang because it got him even more attention than he originally got. It was enough attention for him to do something very offensive in front of the mayor's house. Now someone tried to throw a bomb at him, so he's getting even more attention, and this is kind of the tragedy of our age.
Right. If we could switch gears now, we're now sort of 10 days into this war against the U.S.-Israeli war, aggression against Iran. The stock market is rolling with the price of oil, with expectations that it could continue to keep rising. You were out last week talking to people at the gas pumps about the increases in the costs. What were you hearing from at the average American, the average New Yorker?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because when I was speaking to people last week, the gas prices had gone up 11%. They were paying about, across the country, it was about an average of 34 more cents a gallon. If you look at what things are at today, it's going to be a lot more than that. We're well over $100 a barrel, and many people expect we could hit $200 a barrel, which would be the highest gas prices and highest oil prices in history. During the Bush administration, we were well over $120 a barrel, and it could keep rising. And Americans are going to pay the cost of that at the gas tank. And also, I will add, that will be to the benefit of Russia. Russia, is a country that its economy is centered around state-controlled oil and gas. And, when Bush shot up the oil prices to the highest they'd ever been in history at that point of about $127 a barrel, that had the result of Bolivarian socialism expanding across Latin America. It had the result of kind of regenerating Iran as kind of the leader of anti-Israel and anti-American resistance in the Middle East. And it also enabled Russia to very much stabilize their economy. And, Putin's leadership in his first few years was solidified by the fact that there was such a huge increase in state revenue. I mean, the average income of Russian citizens during the first couple of years that Putin was in office tripled. Now, there was a lot of inflation, so it didn't exactly equate to that. But, I mean, you think about what that would mean to have your income triple, and that was as a result of the high oil prices. So there's a huge geopolitical impact of oil prices. But, yeah, Americans are going to be paying the cost at the pump. And they're already paying the cost, and they're not happy about it. And it's getting a lot worse.
We also saw the Labour Department released its latest job figures. As in February, there was a loss of 92,000 jobs and a rise in unemployment to 4.4%. And the job losses were across all major sectors, from healthcare to construction. But while wage growth remained healthy at 3.8%, hourly earnings were sort of steady. But there is an increase in black unemployment at 7.7%. And as I said, there were job losses in blue collar, but also in the information sector with the advent of AI. With this war and the mega costs of it, I mean, there was a report released today about the Institute of Policy Studies that the Iran war is already costing U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars. I think it was down to, where can I find this figure? the equivalent of military were costing like $45 million per day, and that money could have covered Medicaid for 4 million Americans or SNAP food benefits for 9.5 million. How do you see this war, the trying to balance the justification for this war and how it might affect the economy? How do you see President Trump managing that strange dichotomy?
Well, we have to understand those statistics you're getting, those are from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I assume. And You have to remember that, someone's not considered unemployed unless they've had a full-time job and then lost it, and then they are collecting unemployment benefits for it. Right? And it's per capita, and it's by area. That's how they measure it. And this is actually much more devastating than those statistics you just read would indicate, because all of these jobs are full-time jobs that are being lost.
Yes.
And generally what is happening is people are getting part-time jobs to replace them. There was a moment during Trump's State of the Union where you just wanted to smack the television, because it was just so it just hit you right in the face that Donald Trump had a single mom, or not a single mom, a married mother who homeschools her kids. And he was there and he was bragging about how she no longer has to pay tips on the fact that while, the father is working multiple hours of overtime, 10 to 15 hours of overtime every week. So he's working 55 hours, 65-hour weeks, full-time in a factory doing heavy machinery. And the mom is homeschooling the kids, and in order to make ends meet, she has to work in a restaurant and wait tables and bartend. And then Trump wanted us to applaud and be happy about it because now she no longer has to pay taxes on her tips. And I'm thinking, what kind of economy is this where, the father can work in a heavy machinery plant, he can work, overtime every week, and on top of that, the mom who's homeschooling the kids at home still has to work her nights bartending and waiting tables. This is not a good economy. And we're transitioning away from an economy where people have one good-paying job. We're transitioning toward an economy where people have 2 or 3 part-time jobs that are very, very demanding on them. And this Bureau of Labor Statistics, when these full-time positions are being eliminated, is basically what that says, that these are all people that had full-time jobs, and they lost those full-time jobs, and they will most inevitably not get full-time jobs to replace them. They'll get part-time jobs and be squeezed, to make ends meet. I mean, we're transitioning toward this kind of low-wage gig economy, and it's very devastating. And the impact, and at the end of the day, we don't have the spending power. It is the spending power of the workforce that keeps the economy going. And as technology has eliminated workers from the assembly line, we get into the very problems that we've heard about, that have been the foundation of this, the problem of overproduction or the tendency of the falling rate of profit, that people cannot buy back what they produce, and the spending power of the worker is always decreasing as technology advances.
And what about President Trump gleefully saying that he was increasing production for manufacturing of military weapons and ammunition, and this was good for the economy?
Well, since the end of the Second World War, the U.S. economy has largely been reliant on what they call military Keynesianism. The U.S. government spending lots and lots of money on bombs and tanks and weapons that we hopefully will never have to use, and selling them not just for U.S. military purposes, but selling them around the world. And NATO was largely a way to kind of force countries around the world to buy U.S. weaponry. And the USA has gotten a lot of countries around the world into situations where they have to buy these weapons. And the U.S. economy is very reliant on this. And this is nothing new. This has been going on for, since the end of the Second World War. This is just part of our setup in the United States. So, I mean, yes, of course, there's going to be an increase in military production, but a lot of that's done by robots. It's not done by human beings at the assembly line anymore. I mean, especially when you're making the more high-tech weaponry and all of that. The other thing is a lot of these weapons, and like aircraft and such, are being made by federal prisoners who are getting paid cents an hour. That's another thing that we don't hear about. But, in federal prison facilities, they do have, military manufacturing that goes on. So I'm not sure that, this might, there might be more federal prisoners who get, maybe 15 cents a day or whatever they get to do it. And there might be more companies, corporations that are getting more of a profit because they're, churning out more things with their robots. But I don't know how much that's going to impact the spending power of the American worker.
Right. And just in the little time that we have left, there are two things I wanted to ask you about. The Save America Act, Trump seems to be very bullish on this, and the prospect of some sort of attack on Cuba. What are you hearing on those two things?
Well, when it comes to Cuba, again, They have created a situation where a lot of Americans live in a bubble. You see the huge mobilizations Iran is having right now to support the new supreme leader that was just chosen. The huge mobilizations they're having to defend the country. But a lot of Americans live in a bubble and are convinced, all the Iranians were dancing in the streets. They were just so happy and they can't wait for the USA to come in. Like, that's not the truth. That is just not the truth. The reality is that there is a huge amount of people in Iran that are loyal to the Islamic Republic, and on top of that, there's a lot of Americans that are a lot of Iranians that, at the end of the day, maybe they were critical somewhat, but now they see this blatant violation of their sovereignty, and they're going to rally around their country and defend it. And the same with Cuba, right? Again, a lot of Americans live in this bubble and think, all the Cubans are just waiting for us to invade Cuba and liberate the people there. Well, Fidel Castro was very, very popular, not just in Cuba, but around the world. And the Cuban Communist Party holds on to his legacy. And when it's very obvious that the humanitarian crisis in the country is being created by the fact that we won't allow them to import oil, that they need oil to run their electricity. They need oil in Cuba, and the American government is blocking them from importing oil. It's obvious that the USA is the aggressor. That's going to cause people to rally around the government. So, if there were to be some attack on Cuba, that would be a long war. And I see there's talk of it. And we've already seen an increase in the sanctions, but an actual attack, I think a lot of Cubans, the overwhelming majority, would fight against the United States.